Right now, American troops are once again on their way to Iraq. Many are already there, and President Obama has yet another major foreign policy decision to make: how to handle the escalating situation in the Middle East. Friday, President Obama vowed to keep American forces out of combat in Iraq, but forces there and those en route will provide support and security for U.S. personnel and the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. The president sent a War Powers Act letter to Congress yesterday. I want to bring in Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, first of all, what are your concerns right now? Are we, in the simplest of terms, are we headed for another war?
Well, Craig, I have multiple concerns. First and foremost, short term, about the security of the personnel, the over 5,000 Americans that are in Iraq. We need to be highly concerned about that. But, you know, Craig, this is just a tragedy. This is really snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory. We need to understand really what our role is here, what our goals need to be. And from my standpoint, if you kind of take a step back, the role of America in the world is to convey our values, our principles of freedom and democracy, but also to provide stability to those areas of the world that are stable. And the real tragedy here is, whether you agreed with going into Iraq or not, President Obama came to office and Iraq was largely stable. His job should have been to maintain that stability, and his strategic blunder was not agreeing to a status of force arrangement where we could have provided that stability. Now we see the tragedy that is.
Senator, at no point in that explication did you mention Nouri al-Maliki. At no point did you mention President Maliki or his responsibility in all of this.
Give me time. Listen, I think Maliki has been a disaster for Iraq. He would have been less of a disaster had we maintained a status of force where we could have influenced, we could have forced him to include the Sunnis, include the Kurds. We had an opportunity here to actually show the rest of the Middle East that Sunni, Shia, Kurd could get together for their shared prosperity. We could have set up that model. It was stable. We had that possibility, but President Obama squandered that opportunity by not leaving a stabilizing force in Iraq. And you got to take a look at this. Is a disaster. Now what are we going to establish? A state of Al-Qaeda between Syria and Iraq? Are we going to totally break this thing up? This is just a tragedy.
Senator,
again, this is snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Senator,
it never had to happen.
In 2010, you were asked if you supported the troop withdrawal plan in Iraq. This is what you said.
Well, I think that was actually a withdrawal plan that was proposed by President Bush before President Obama actually came into office. And I'm hoping it'll work. I think the Iraqi defense forces are being stood up, and hopefully that will provide the security that Iraq needs as a nation to continue as a functioning democracy.
Were you wrong in your assessment, Senator?
No, listen, I've always said it was a strategic blunder not leaving a stabilizing force behind there. You know, 15,000 troops. You know, I've always been in support of that. That is what we should have done. I never thought we should leave 150,000 troops in Iraq, but a stabilizing force, that's what we did in Germany, that's what we did in Japan, that's what we did in Korea. Those situations have been stabilized. That has worked for world peace and economic security. President Obama chose not to do that. He bugged out.
So what we're seeing unfold now, essentially, is our fault.
It didn't have to happen. It really was a strategic blunder on the part of President Obama.
Are you saying that it's the fault of the Obama administration and this? Are you saying that it's our fault?
Listen, there are many people that are involved in the tragedy that is Iraq. You know, Nouri Maliki obviously has a big share of the blame here. But again, America's role in the world is to provide the kind of security that only, or stability that only America could provide. We had, you know, I feel sorry for any American that has sacrificed either their life or being wounded, or how about $850 billion of Americans' money that we spent to try and set up a democracy for those folks in Iraq. That has all been squandered because of the strategic blunder of President Obama not leaving a stabilizing force there. It's a tragedy.
One could argue, Senator, that the original sin, the original strategic blunder was going into Iraq in the first place, no?
President Obama came into office and Iraq was largely stable, and there was an opportunity to set that up as an example how Sunni, Shia, and Kurd to get together,
you
actually
said
have
that,
a stable.
Senator.
I understand. Well, that's an important point to make. President Obama came into and you have to deal with the reality as you find it when you are given the responsibility. President Obama had the responsibility to stabilize the situation. He did not, and now we are living with those consequences.
Senator, this is one of your Democratic counterparts, Senator Bob Menendez, just a short time ago talking to Chuck Todd. This is on the Daily Rundown. Take a listen to what he said.
While I don't advocate bringing boots on the ground in order to stop the march of ISIS, the challenge is what is in our interest, what are the consequences to us, and in that regard, we have to both think about whether or not there is targeted and limited in duration strikes.
Do you agree with Senator Menendez?
Well, first of all, our first action should be to reach out to those moderate Sunnis to see how polarized they are, how disgusted they are with what Maliki has done. And quite honestly, I don't want to take any action that is going to inflame the Sunnis that we're working with us, that look to America to provide that stability. I don't want to inflame that situation. So again, this is very complex. It's a tragedy that is degraded to this point. But we have to deal with the situation as we find it. So here's what we should do. Make sure that we help the Kurds and stabilize that region. We need to make sure that southern Iraq remains stable. And then from my standpoint, we first reach out to those moderate Sunnis who've really cast their lot now with al-Qaeda when, let's face it, before they had rejected that. They had joined the coalition government, and we didn't leave people behind to try and force, and let's face it, we had to force Maliki to maintain an open government, a coalition government. This never would have happened, I don't believe.
Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Senator, thank you for your time.
Have a great day.
Something else worth noting here. We'll come back to that a little bit later.